Hello, everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I am so thankful for all of you for watching this particular video series that we have titled "The Qibla Controversy." And I want to thank you, basically for your comments and your interactions. And as you can see from the previous episodes, why the name controversy is appropriate for this particular video series. And I'm also thankful, of course, for my dear brother, Dr. Jay Smith, who is with me here in studio. Welcome back, brother. And, if you watched the last episode before this one, you would have picked on the fact that we highlighted the vitriol, basically, response by Dr. David King against Dan Gibson. And prior to that, of course, his response to a few in the academic arena as well who disagreed with his own findings. But today, really, I wanted to be kind of like a special closure, if you will, a closing episodes to venture into this dangerous arena and dangerous territory that if you are in the academic field, if you're doing research in the field of, let's say, Islamic studies, or in this case, early Islamic studies, that if you come across any findings that contradict the traditional Islamic history or its own conclusions, then you will be called names and you'll be labeled as if you are a hater of Islam or an Islamophobe. And of course, no better than Dr. Jay Smith to unpack this dangerous trend with me. Dr. Smith.
Yeah, and the reason you're bringing it up is a quote that we first referred to in the last episode. And let me repeat the quote, where King says this of Gibson. He says, "More seriously, Gibson's writings are guaranteed to contribute to Islamophobia amongst those who have no idea about the one and only civilization which really took orientation seriously for over 1,400 years. And he said as well that Gibson's work has contributed to dubious causes. And I think we need to pick up on that. Something's going on here where you start putting this kind of language out. That if you do what Gibson's doing, this is Islam. This is hatred of Islam.
Right.
Then I'm going to give you one more quote because this really underlines his problem. He says, "In all such investigations, no conclusions should be drawn based on actual Qibla directions calculated from modern geographical data using some kind of exact mathematical procedures. Also, measurements and calculations to the nearest degrees are adequate for investigative purposes. Any attempt at greater accuracy is unrealistic." Woof! Wow. When I read this, I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. What he's saying is, who are you to use real accurate measurements on Qiblas? Because we knew that they didn't have these kind of instruments back then, so therefore we shouldn't expect them to be accurate. But don't use them, because if you're doing that, then the whole premise gets thrown out because you're not understanding what the people were really about. Gibson never did that. No one is ever doing that. The only reason he's using very accurate instrument is to make sure that he is correct, because he was surprised how that almost all of these Qiblas were facing not Mecca. That's true, and both King and Gibson agree with that. But they all seem to be facing one direction, one unique direction. For the first, up until 706, all were facing one direction, and it wasn't all over the place like the later scholars were saying, or like King was saying. Up until 706, remember the Qibla was canonized in 624. So we're talking about almost 80 years. For almost 80 years, every Qibla was facing exactly. So what does Gibson do? I want to see if my hunch is correct. So he uses modern equipment, much more accurate. And he found, not only am I correct, they are so accurate, they're within 2 degrees of inaccuracy as far away as Canton, way over in China, and Shedman in Kerala in southern India.
Did Michael Cook and Patricia Crone use modern technology to make their assessment that they're not facing towards Mecca? And
in the 1970s, the Astra satellites we didn't have GPS. These satellites didn't even exist. They were not in space yet to be able to do that.
And he still attacked them.
He still attacked them because they dared to question the integrity of the Arabs. They dared to question the integrity of Islam. Now, that's where this Islamophobia comes in. So put the two together and you can see what King is saying here is, don't ever use any instrumentations to try to correct what I've already found, or to try to find out maybe something more accurate, or to try to support what your hunches are. Don't use that, because it's not fair. Because you're going to hurt the Muslim sensibilities. You're going to hurt Islam. You're going to be. This is going to be Islamophobic. That's Islamophobia at its worst. Now I'm exaggerating here, but this is what he's coming across. When in reality, what he's really saying, what I think he's really saying is, don't ever question my findings. Because I have spent 50, 60 years working at what I do, and I love the fact that I went to the Muslims to find out what their reasoning was. Okay, so they were late, yes, 9th, 10th, 11th, and they didn't even know themselves. They admit that they don't even know what they're talking about. They're just guessing. These are theories they think that were used, when in reality, actually, those theories don't even explain exactly why they're so accurate. Yet Gibson, using modern technology, has actually been able to come up and say, actually, I know why they were so accurate. And the reason why is because they used material, that's the same material they've been using since the 2nd century BC. This is nothing new. They use the stars. The stars don't move. The North Star stays constant. They had 32 of these stars. These guys were a lot more clever than you or me. They used poetry to make sure that they were constant from star to star, east and west, going north and south. That's why they were able to get to Oasis. That's why they were able to get to the war where water was. They were the only ones able to do this. No one else could do this. That's why the Nabateans became so great. That's why they were so honored, because they were the only ones that could get across the desert and get all the way over into India and all the way over into China.
And look at the fallacy of his argument. So we have modern technology, but don't you think the people of that time thought they have also modern technology?
For them, they was modern
Exactly.
technology. Except they wouldn't have called it modern, because the stars have been out there since time immemorial.
What I'm saying, I mean, they used what was best for them. We're using what is best for us. Tomorrow, a next generation will have different technology. Are they not allowed to examine our work?
No.
For instance, I mean, I find his conclusion laughable. What he's telling me, for instance, I'm working on the Sana manuscript, was he's telling me, don't you dare to use the ultraviolet lighting to see that somebody wrote on these manuscripts and erased them.
Another underlayer.
That's what he's telling me.
Yeah, don't use that. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Also,
because you just exposed something.
It's also self-contradictory, because shouldn't we say the same thing of the 9th, 10th, 11th? Weren't they using modern technology? Weren't they using their views? Their theories were all based on their own studies. So should he not say that to the 9th, 10th, 11th? Shame on you for using your own studies.
Bazdawi, right?
Bazdawi, shame on you in 1100 for daring to actually use material that you now know, but they would not have had access to in the 6th and 7th century. To me, that's a self-contradictory. But let's get back, because I want to really get into something much more deep on this. Once he uses the word Islamophobic, what does that do? It shuts down the discussion, doesn't it?
Of course, PC kicks in immediately.
PC kicks in, and he knows this. In fact, this is what lots of liberals do. I'm finding all over. There is this tendency by anybody who is working in the and this is unique to the Islamic world. Well, Islamophobic, that word only exists for Islam. Is there such a thing as Christianophobic? Is there something as a Hinduphobic?
Not at all.
Is there anything about Sikhophobic? Buddhistophobic?
Not at all.
Atheophobic? Humanophobic? Or do these words even sound stupid sounding them? There's only one word that uses phobic. Actually, there's two. There's homophobic and there's also Islamophobic. These are the only two phobias that you're not permitted to talk about.
Homophobic is a disease, actually, is a psychological disorder.
And they would say Islamophobia is also a disorder. If you're going to do it with homophobia, you also have Islamophobia. But as soon as you use the word Islamophobia, immediately everybody shuts down discussion and they change the topic. Why? Because this is the way the liberal left always likes to demonize their opponent. All they need to do is use one tag word. You can call it racism, you can call it Islamophobia, you can call it homophobia, you name it. As soon as you say those words, then it's almost like it's weaponized against you. What King has done here is to bring the word Islamophobia in a context that doesn't make any sense. There's nothing hatred about what he has done. There's nothing hatred about finding new evidence. There's nothing hatred about actually going and actually doing the work that he should have done. This is not Islamophobic. If anything, I would suggest that King is now imposing this on Gibson. So with the hope that maybe Muslims will start to rise up and really criticize him.
Not only that, but he's probably trying to shut down any even possible attempt in the future to critique his work. That's pretty much what's going on here.
Well, there is a problem, however. What kings do, and he knows what he's doing here, by using the word Islamophobia, he's saying that he is recognizing that this is a problem in uniquely the Muslim world. In the Muslim world, what you find, what you discover, what you dare to say in public may kill you.
Yeah.
I don't know of any other religion that has a word called fatwa. What does fatwa mean?
It's a religious decree, order, if you wish, against something. Sometimes the fatwa is to clarify something, but in this case, if you speak ill against the Prophet of Islam or Islam, a clerk somewhere can say, well, he become an apostate, or he became an infidel, or he's blaspheming, and, death is his punishment. That's it. It's an order now.
Now, see, I've had to work with this. This is something I've been working now in the Islamic world for almost 40 years. So I have a lot more experience than you or a lot of other people. And in the 40 years, I've had to deal with this. I've had this thrown at me all the time. I'm called a hate preacher. I got 2 different lectures that I was supposed to do in 2 different universities in Hong Kong in 2017 and 2016, 2017, that were both shut down because of this word Islamophobic and hate preacher. That's all they had to do. A student had to just go into the legislature, the executive office, say this man is an Islamophobe, this man is a hate preacher. I was in the middle of a lecture. The place was packed out with 200 people, students from one of the best universities in Hong Kong, and they came and shut us down because I was an Islamophobe. So I've had it done personally against me. I get this all the time now in Britain. But let me just give you an example with Gerald Hotting. Back in 1994, 1995, I was studying. I was an occasional student. I was not getting a degree under Gerald Hotting. I already had my master's degree in Islamic Studies from Fuller Seminary in California. So I had gone to London. I had been there I've only been in London for about 2 to 3 years, and I was studying under Gerald Hotting, who is a student of also Wandsboro, who is also a colleague of Crone and Cook. And he was introducing this new material, this brand new material on the problems with the emergence of Islam. In fact, the whole class was that. There was about 50 students in the class. Within 2 weeks, half the class had left. All of them were Muslims. And many times as they left, they slammed the door as they left. Now, the word Islamophobic hadn't been invented yet. They didn't use that word. But they would, before they would left, they would turn towards Wandsboro and say, "You hate Islam." And Wandsboro was just crushed. I could see he was crushed. Only 2 students remained for the whole year that were Muslims. And one was a convert to Islam. I don't want to give you his name because he's a friend of mine. We became good friends. It was fascinating to me that throughout that whole course, Dr. Gerald Hotting would not say anything critical.
So you were talking about Hotting. Yeah.
Hotting would just say one thing after another. He would put up there, here's the Dome of the Rock. And did you notice it's not facing Mecca. It doesn't have a Qibla. And I'd raise my hand and say, hold on a minute, that's hugely important. He said, no, I don't want to go into ramifications of it. It doesn't have a Qibla towards Mecca. And I said, well, that's enormously significant. He didn't want to talk about the significance because he'd just seen half his class leave. I went down to Speaker's Corner and took this material to Speaker's Corner. And back then, cameras were starting to come at Speaker's Corner. And I got up. I wasn't on a ladder at this time. This is while I was still on the ground. I didn't get on the ladder till 1995.
You were upgraded in
No, I was beaten up. 60 Muslims beat me up, and I went unconscious. And so the police demanded I get up on the ladder. I didn't even know what happened. I was told that a black man came and put his body over me and took most of the blows for me. But because of that, the police were so scared that they would kill me that they asked me to get on a ladder. And that was 1995. But this is 1994, before all this happened. And I started using this material, Hotting's material, because I was studying. I was learning it. This was the fall of 1994. I was learning it, and I was taking it down and introducing it at Speaker's Corner. And somebody filmed me. And this got onto one of these old, these old VHS films, and was put in a bookstore on the window. It was there in the window of the bookstore. Controversies at Speaker's Corner, something like that. Something about Speaker's Corner controversies. And one of the students in our class came and gave this to Hotting. And he watched it. He put it in his VHS, those old VHSs. He was livid. He asked to talk to me, and we went outside the class. He says, I want you to never, ever use any of this material. It's because, how dare you do that without asking me first? I said, hold on a minute. You're teaching this. This is what you've written. I'm just quoting you. Why are you teaching it if you don't want us to use it? Aren't we supposed to use what you're teaching? Aren't we supposed to take it out? Aren't we supposed to get it peer reviewed? I'm peer reviewing it for you. I'm going to get beat up, not you. I'm the one now. This is before I really got knocked unconscious, but I've been punched already a few times. I already I don't know how many glasses I've had broken down there. And I said, I'm the one that's taking the punches for you. If anything, you should be happy. He was almost shivering with anger against me.
Wow.
He did not want this to get into Muslim hands.
So
now, that to me showed me something. This happened, and the penny started to drop for me.
Right.
Now, let's jump to next year, 1995. I was coming under the tutelage of Dr. Patricia Corona. She was, at that time, I was doing some special studies that she wanted to help me with, and she was at Cambridge University. And I was then challenged by the Muslims to a debate on this material, this very material, which is great. I'd never been trained to do a debate. I'd never done a debate in my life, and I said, okay, I'll do it. They wanted to get Dr. Jamal Badawi to come down. Dr. Jamal Badawi was the world authority on the Quran at that time in the 1990s. He was coming back from Malaysia. He was stopping in London, and he agreed to do a debate with me there at Trinity College in Cambridge University. So I went that week before, and I went up to Patricia Corona's office, and I had written down about 10 challenges that she had come up with, that Cook had come up with, Wansbury had come up with. So I took their challenges and I introduced them. The very same 3 that King ate are the ones that I was using, and this is back in 1995. And I wanted to go through it and review it. And so we sat there, and she says, yeah, that's good. No, there's a better way to say it. Why don't you do it this way? And here's a better example. And she really helped me with
I would have loved to meet her.
Put together my debate. And then I said, well, why don't you do this? You're so good at it. She says, Jay, I'm an academic. I will not dare do what you're going to do tomorrow. That Saturday. I don't know if it was tomorrow or 3 days later. She says, you can do it. I cannot. I said, what do you mean you can't? She says, you don't realize those of us in academia, we can do all the research we want. But why do you think I'm here in Cambridge University, not Oxford anymore? If we write it up and we actually come to conclusions on it, we will lose our chair. We will lose our position.
What a really sad reality.
And I'm saying, and really the penny dropped for me. She said that now. She's no longer living, and it's sad that we've lost her. But she is one of the few in the world that can do this because she has 15 languages under her belt.
Jay, it breaks my heart, and I tell you why. I'm going to speak to my audience, really, and this is kind of like a personal thing for me. I am a former Muslim from Saudi Arabia, speaking Arabic. I have 2 masters, by the way, masters in engineering. I have a master's in biblical, basically communications. I studied Greek and Hebrew, the biblical Greek and Hebrew. I'm doing my PhD right now to study one of the earliest Quranic manuscripts. Yet what I heard so far tells me this: don't you dare to publish publicly any of your findings, since your intent is going to be to critique Islam and therefore keep it to yourself. Unless you're willing to publish something that is positive and supports the Quran and supports the early Quranic manuscripts. Other than that, don't you dare to publish anything that will be critical. Is that what I'm hearing?
You're hearing it correctly. I could give you anecdote after anecdote. The difficulty is if I'm going to give you these anecdotes, I'll have to name names, and I don't dare do that. Even trying to support what you have said, I am not capable of doing. I can only talk about myself. I'm only permitted to talk about what's happened to me personally. I can say about Patricia Corona one more anecdote, and because we talked about this has happened. She was asked to come back to a number of years before she died, just a number of years ago. In fact, it was this century. She was going to do a talk there at SOAS. She was not permitted to actually do a talk at the building of SOAS. She had to do it outside of SOAS because there was so much unrest by the Muslim students on campus. This is her alma mater. She was head of department at Cambridge University. She was then was asked to come to Princeton University, where she was head of department. She, along with Michael Cook, were there as the senior scholars in their field, considered to be one of the 2 of the best scholars in the world today. And yet she was not even permitted to go to her own alma mater to actually do her talk there in her own building. And to me, that says something about what's happening in Britain. That says something what's happening in the West. We are shutting down any any critical assessment of Islam. There is a academic, almost a rubric within academia that starts from the premise that you cannot criticize the Prophet and you cannot criticize the Quran. Those are
unwritten
the two things.
rules, basically.
It's unwritten rule, but it's very real. Right. And academics, therefore, are not permitted. Listen, I could give you anecdote after anecdote, story after story, what's happened to me personally in university after university where I've been barred now in Britain. I used to do debates all the time in the 1990s. In fact, whenever a Christian union was challenged to a debate by a Islamic society, they would come to me to do the debate on almost every subject. I wouldn't take every subject, but almost every subject that they did, I would be willing to do so as long as I could be critical of Islam. And if I demanded reciprocity. So if you're going to attack the Bible, then you have to also confront the Quran. If you're going to attack the Trinity, then you have to confront Muhammad. If you're going to attack the God of the Bible, you're going to have to also attack Allah. I demanded this, and I usually did it. And I was one of the first to actually introduce polemics. That means confronting Islam on the universities. And I got every university just shut down. After a while, I was no longer permitted. To the point now that nobody is permitted to do these kind of questions anymore. And to me, that's sad. That our academic institutions here in the West are so fearful of Islam that all you need to do is walk into an office and say, this man's an Islamophobe. They didn't have to prove it in Hong Kong. They didn't came to ask me what my subject was on. They didn't even have me interview me to see what I was going to say, to show what I was going to do. Now, what was fascinating is the one that we just happened a year and a half ago, or about a year ago. Was it a year ago? I think it was a year ago when I was in Hong Kong. So it was 2018 when we were thrown out and were not permitted to do that talk there at the university. We just went to a church right next door, filmed the whole thing. That is now on Fander Film. Go look at it. Over 50,000 people have watched that. I could not get 50,000 people.
What is the title? Do you remember? What was it?
I'll look on it right here.
Yeah, because we want people to go and benefit from this. And again, it really breaks my heart, Jay, to hear you say this, and which is real, by the way, because in my search to find an institution that will accept my proposal to do a critical assessment, a textual criticism, if you wish, of early Quranic manuscripts, I can tell that most of the scholars I talked to almost laughed at me for even daring to go that direction.
Okay, it's called The Lecture the Muslims Tried to Ban in Hong Kong. The lecture the Muslims tried to ban in Hong Kong is put up 8 months ago. So it's put up last spring for what should have been done, what was done back in November of Wonderful. 2018, yeah. A little over a year ago. So it's almost 50,000 have watched that now. And it's going to go over 50,000 within another year. So you can see, no way could I, in some ways, by banning me, it actually makes my material more popular.
That's right. Why don't we close with any conclusions you have reached concerning this controversy between King and Gibson, if you like to close with that, of course.
Yeah, and I think this is something that Gibson is not the first to be vilified and been attacked for what he is finding. There will be many others. I am in contact with Gibson. You're in contact with Gibson. We're talking to him. He is even reticent to come on film with us because we are so controversial, because we don't have the problem, you and I, we don't have the problem. We don't have any chairs to protect, put it that way. Right. That we are more than willing to go and ask the difficult questions, the controversial questions, the polemical questions. There are very few of us that are doing what you're doing, Al-Fadi, or doing what I'm doing, or what Hatun Tash is doing, or what David Wood is doing, or what Sam Shamoon is doing, Christian Prince. There's very few of us. You can almost number them on two hands who are out there, who are well known, who are actually confronting Islam, and we get death threats all the time. And we do have to be careful. We don't tell people where we live. We don't tell people people don't know who my wife is or who my kids are. I don't even say where my house is. Right. I'm very careful not to do this. You do the same thing. We're very careful to censor that. And I would love to be open about where I live. I would love for people to come and meet me. Now, I don't have a problem with people meeting me in public. I remember when I was at Speaker's Corner, I would get there every Sunday. I would, on the videos, I would say to the videos, I'm going to be here next Sunday. If you have Muslims really have a problem, come and take me on. I'm here. Come and get me. And I know David Wood does this. He almost challenges them to take him down. But why is it that we have this in this type of atmosphere? Why is it uniquely in Islamic work that there is this fear of being killed, and they do get killed. And we've seen what happened to Fazl Rahman. Let's see what happened to Taslima Nasreen. We've seen with Taha Hussein. We saw what happened to Salman Rushdie. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. And it tends to be people who are Muslims themselves. Hatun Tash has been beat up. She's almost been killed. So these are things. She was my colleague. She still is. I remember getting on the ladder with her. She had a neck brace on for 3 months. You can see it in 2016 because they tried to hang her. These are things that are unique to those of us who are critical of Islam.
Right. And I mean, you can even name some Muslim thinkers who lost their life over this. We're not talking just converts or Christians or Orientalists. There are some Muslim thinkers. One guy I remember wrote a book. I mean, kind of like the translation of the book name is My Dilemma with the Quran, in Arabic, Mihnati Ma'al Quran. What he was saying is like, he's saying, I know, in his intro, he's saying, I know this is a groundbreaking, approach. I will probably lose my life. And he did. He was killed over it. But he was critically asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Why does it teach this? Why does it have this grammatical error? Why does it say this? Why does it say that? How can this book be really from God if it has these issues? I mean, he was just asking assessment questions, and still lost his life. I know the guy who, for instance, is known as the Quran-only movement, Khalifa, who has a translation of the Quran, by the way, who discredited the last 2 verses in chapter 9, by the way. He thought that they were added in
128,
later.
129.
And he came up with this number of miracles of the Quran. He was killed also. And it's just, these are Muslims, actually.
Yeah.
We're not talking, people who left Islam or anything like that. But this is, in of itself, is enough stress on all of us. And yet to find that even the academic field is yet another, arena that will launch an attack and lodge an attack against us for just daring to ask questions and bringing out data. I mean, I ask you, my audience, did you benefit from this series? Did you benefit from the ones before that we called The Unknown History of Islam? Did you benefit from anything talk about Islamic slavery in Islam? Did you benefit from anything about the Qibla and Petra and everything? Why should we hide these data? But what about you, Muslims who are watching this? Did you benefit from that? Let us know. We want to hear from you. Do you really want us to hide it from you? Is that fair for you that we know such groundbreaking data and at the same time we do not want to share it with you? Is that fair for you, at least, or to you? I don't think so.
Well, God bless Gibson for doing what he's doing. He's coming up with so much new material. I'm having a hard time keeping up with him, and I want him to continue. And I want to thank Dan Gibson, if he's watching this, to don't give up heart. Don't worry about what King has done. I think any of us who have read what King has said here, we know that this is nothing more than emotional blackmail. It's unfortunate that he had to call you an Islamophobic, that what you're doing is Islamophobic. It's unfortunate that he had to revert to those kind of terms. You're not Islamophobic. And more than that, King doesn't even realize that when Gibson is putting out this material, he's not trying to destroy Islam. He's just saying, I have found now an answer as to why these Qiblas are different. I now know I think we know, because it's all fitting together. What's interesting, Dr. Mark Dury out of Australia is finding that almost everything Gibson's saying about the Arabic language, we're going to do a series on that in the spring.
I mean,
looking at the Arabic language.
His work is amazing on that.
It's amazing what he has found, that the Arabic language is almost all derived not from the Hijaz, not from the southern part of Arabia. It almost comes out straight. The Quranic language, especially, the Quranic language comes specifically out of the Nabatean script.
Right.
And he's going to give you 5 reasons why, but we're going to have to wait for the spring to unpack that.
Absolutely, and I hope everyone is enjoying this type of work that myself and my dear brother here, Dr. J. Smith, are doing. We are going to, continue to keep you updated via Facebook and via other platforms like YouTube, for instance, about any upcoming events like this. Be sure, of course, to go to my dear brother's YouTube channel. What is it called again, so people can hear it?
Fander Films. Pfander Films. If we could probably write it at the bottom here so you can see it. Fander, it's named after Dr. Colt Fander, and it's actually, you do pronounce the P, who is my hero from the 1800s, who wrote a book in 1829 that is foundational for everything I do.
Amen.
And basically in that book, he just confronted Muhammad, he confronted the Quran, he defended Jesus, and he defended the Bible. What 4 areas would you rather talk about than those 4? And that's what I spend my whole life doing. So Fander films are named after Dr. Carl Fander. I wish he were here on today so I could thank him personally.
Amen. And of course, you can, if you're watching this, you are at our channel, which is siratinternational.com. We encourage you to share these videos among your circle. Go to my Facebook page, alfadi.sira, or my ministry page, Sira International. And remember, we are missionaries. We live by support. Please prayerfully consider to give towards my brother's ministry, to give towards my ministry. We thank you in advance for your partnership. Until we meet again in another series, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching. Please like our video, and we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sira International. And be sure also to click the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we upload new videos into the channel. And finally, I like to prayerfully encourage you to become a patron through Patreon. Your giving is much needed and will enable us to produce more and more of videos like this so that we can publish them on a weekly basis. So thank you in advance.